Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So here I want to cover the best multi-target companions you potentially should be using. With a recent update, we had some improvements to some companions in particular, like Drizzt, Minsk, Sergeant Nox and Alphonse Nox, and Wulfgar for their damage output in multi-target. And Regis got a bit of a nerf. So let's make sure we check all that and also compare versus others that say didn't get changed. What are the top performing multi-target companions that I found in my tests? First of all, as a quick disclaimer, I do not recommend spending millions and millions on a multi-target companion. There are plenty of budget ones out there that drop all the time from lockboxes nice and cheap, and just pick one of those up and use them. No problems. You do not need the best, particularly when multi-target companions are not even that effective on the overall scheme of things. You should be doing far more damage than your companion, and your companion just becomes that little thing on the side that's a little bit extra. However, there's one scenario where you might actually want one, and that is when you're like AFK farming. This will be prevalent in the upcoming event, which I highly recommend you take advantage of, the Protector's Jubilee. However, more on that a bit later in the video. First of all, my normal tests and ranking of multi-target companion is based on dummies at 35k rating. You then summon all 6 of them. I always do it in the exact same order, otherwise the companion can sometimes, for some reason, target a different one. We get hit here, which initiates the fight. The companion starts acting, like Minsk does here, and then he starts attacking. He got some improvements to his multi-target damage, particularly since he doesn't stand there for a century petting his boo, which means he has more time attacking. So ultimately this test, which I currently use as my main test to rank multi-target companions, is what we have. However, towards the end of the fight, there's like maybe 1 or 2 targets left with a lot of hit points. And that kind of makes the fight kind of biased towards companions that have a decent amount of single target damage. Therefore, I wanted to introduce a new type of test, and we will show those rankings in just a second. But first of all, we did go and test out some of those updated companions here, like Minsk, retesting Regis with his nerf, Nox, Wulfgar, and even Drizzt. What we do find is Regis has gone down a little bit in damage output. Just a little bit. Alphonse Nox I never tested before, but he comes out there like rank 9. Minsk we also did not test before in multi-target, but he comes out at like rank 19. Sergeant Nox, for some reason less damage than Alphonse Nox, but could just be due to like randomness with regards to his positioning, where he could only hit 1 target versus how Alphonse Nox was positioned, he could hit 2 targets. So this test not really perfect in that regard. Companion movement is still pretty random. And then we also have to add in Wulfgar, who comes in like rank 12. So this is the ranking in terms of this test. But like I said, I'm not that happy with the test. So we took it a step further. We went in the skirmish, Castle's Retreat. Here we have the initial mob group, 5 targets. So this is testing Wulfgar, and this is pretty much what we do in the test. We have to keep the companion healed, but I personally don't do any damage. I try to position myself pretty much on top of the companion, so he's not getting any benefit from, say, combat advantage, because if I was to do that, then it would make positioning an awful lot more tricky trying to maximize combat advantage. So we just try avoid it altogether, which would just mean the companion's damage would scale up when they do get combat advantage. The companion doesn't have any coding specifically to move for combat advantage, so that's just how it's going to be. We do move away out of the red areas because those will actually heal the mobs if I get hit by them, not if my companion gets hit by them. So we just keep the companion healed and let him do the damage. So then we just look at the logs, and once he's actually finished killing all of them, we can then see what the DPS is. And it also does matter a bit on positioning. If he managed to, say, get all 5 of them exactly in front of him, he could potentially hit all 5 of them all the time. There wouldn't be like 2 or 3 left. They would all be dead at the same time. But Mob fights are not perfect. There is randomness with how enemies move. And so we took this as a test for Wolfgar. And what we did is test all of these other ones too. Dritz got a little bit of update with front loading his damage. I didn't expect him to do a lot because there's no actual raw increases. Regis supposedly got a nerf. Minsk supposedly got a bit of a buff, and Wolfgar a bit of a buff, with also Nox getting a bit of a buff. So I expected them to do fairly decent. But then I also wanted to throw in, say, the Abyssal Chicken, which some people might use. It's got a decent swarm attack. Zuna, just because she's originally a very powerful one. She did get nerfed. Maybe she's still somewhat good. We'll see. Then like Shadowkai Witch, who's known to be very powerful in certain situations. And I also threw in the Intellect Devourer just because it has a very good stun ability. And I also have the Minotaur because of that as well, also having very good stun and group up effect ability. So what we do find in the rankings then, when we look at all of the data of those tests, I did one for each of them. Yeah, Regis still comes out on top despite his nerf. It's actually closely followed behind by Wolfgar. Be very aware though that his range is like 10 feet less than Regis. He has his Wicked Strike here, which is a bit of an area attack, and then his swing, which is like 15-foot radius. So he really has to have his targets within pretty close range for him to actually deal decent damage. Whereas Regis can have them within 25 feet. And you can see 66% of his damage comes from Whirlwind of Blades. So he's relying on that a lot to output that damage, which just means enemies can be that bit more spread out and he will still deal decent damage, which kind of just makes him more reliable, and I would definitely rank him higher than Wolfgar, even though they're super close on damage output. And there's also one thing to note, which is the Minotaur Mercenary. I would personally say he is the best multi-target companion. Why? Because of his crowd control ability. He's going to group up enemies and then he's going to spin and deal a decent amount of damage to them. This is the companion I would recommend anybody to use if you have him. If you don't have him, well, I would not spend millions for him. That's just the way of multi-target companions. Like I said at the beginning, do not spend millions for them at all. There is absolutely no need. You can check this list. There's like Earth, Archon, Rhymefire, Golem. Those two in particular, super cheap companions. Potentially somebody might go manipulate the market by spiking their prices really high, but just you wait. More people will open lockboxes and those prices will plummet dramatically. Yup, don't pay more than like 44 astral damage for a golem or 77 for an Earth Archon. Anybody selling it for more is kind of just scamming you. Particularly when I come out with these videos, I suggest certain companions. People manipulate the market, prices skyrocket, and so you just have to wait for things to settle again. Know the market, know the supply and demand, and just don't overpay. A multi-target companion is not something I would prioritize at all. I have a few here and there, but I've never gone out of my way to buy one particularly for multi-target. Now here's a demonstration why I would say the Minotaur is the best. He groups up the enemies, just knocks them up a bit, and now he's going to start spinning, and he hits all of them. And he can kill them pretty quickly. Like Regis is going to do his Whirlwind of Blades, and then he's just going to stab one of them. And he's going to take a while, and he might only finish them by the time he can do his Whirlwind of Blades again. So unless Regis can one-shot them, the Minotaur can generally come out on top. But even that, you go summon a different companion, like this Rhymefire Golem, we go over to this group, and this Golem can do a pretty good job of beating them up. There's his burst attack. They're all below half HP, and then he just goes and punches them and kills them one by one, and they're gone pretty quick as well. Most multi-target companions, the ones that are decently high on this list, are going to do very well in zones just beating up enemies. Like, it's particularly useful when you want to stand around AFK. Like, if you don't want to be doing anything, you want to just have your companion kill the enemies, then you can just stand here and have them deal some damage. Like Regis was great there because he just one-shot the little spiders. But he can't one-shot this guy, so now he sits here for a little while and still has to go stab him like the other companions have to do. So he's not exactly an awful lot faster. Wolfgar's great because he has a nice air of effect on his attacks. We go up to this group, you can see that was his lunge attack there, and then he can strike both of them with just that melee attack. He's going to kill them in decent time as well. Move on to the next group here. Have a look again. He can hit most of them with just his at-will strike, but he is pretty limited on range. So if you have one of the mobs just standing back shooting with his arrows, or he ends up split like this where some are behind him and he can't hit them, then he might just lose out on damage versus something that might be a bit more reliable like Regis. He has the damage potential. Just again, Regis is still also only a 25-foot radius, and from there he's just single target. So that's his attacks. There's still a guy left. He needs to use a few daggers, and he ends up taking about the same amount of time as what the Minotaur Mercenary would do here. So ultimately, yeah, if I have to recommend one as the best, it's most definitely the Minotaur Mercenary. He has a 50-foot range on this attack. Like, he can group up enemies from very far away, and he's pulling them together, which is a huge benefit for your own attacks in like group content, not to mention having them then close to himself to be able to hit them all with his attacks, just his at-will attacks and his spinning attacks. But again, do not overpay for a multi-target companion. They are just not that effective compared to what your own abilities can do. I can go slot in Bane here and Burning Light. I'm a paladin, not even a damage dealer. I can use Bane and pretty much one-shot these guys. So can you on your class. I can even switch over to like Blessed Wanderer, give myself an extra 20% boost. And yeah, 2 encounter powers and everything's dead. It's going to be the same, even better on a damage dealer class. I don't even have a damage setup. I'm sitting here with mainly like healer gear. I can kill all these guys before my companion even does anything. So yeah, really do not invest much into a multi-target companion. Again, for the Jubilee, I do recommend at least one that's going to do something, just so that you can stand around and have your companion attack and kill them while you're potentially away doing something else and then can come back. It will be very useful, as you will see when I explain a bit more what you'll be actually doing in the Jubilee. Like right now, I could recommend the Rimefire Golem as the most budget companion to use when wanting to AFK farm. You do not even need to upgrade it. That is an illusion that people always fall into, that you have to upgrade it for it to deal more damage. No, they deal exactly the same amount of damage as on Mythic as they do on Green. There's no difference with upgrading, especially when you're scaled. So yeah, just pick up a bunch of companions that cost literally nothing, test them out for yourself as well, and like this Golem can do very well here in multi-target, just beating up these guys in the Whispering Cavern while you just stand around AFK. He'll beat them up in no time at all compared to the others as well. Yes, the data might show that others are a bit better, but they're not that much better. Again, going over here, he goes and uses his big explodey attack once he enters the fight, and they're all below half HP. And then he just gives them a punch and they're dead. That's it. The entire group. The next wave spawns. He goes and attacks them and boom. And then he can just one tap each of them because he's already put them on such low hit points. There is absolutely no reason you should overpay for any of the hyped up multi-target companions. Yes, if I have to label one of them as the best, I would confidently say Minotaur Mercenary. Combination of grouping up enemies, crowd controlling them, and decent, reliable damage with a massive radius of 50 feet. More than any other companion can have. But hopefully this is somewhat insightful. Again, there are differences between, say, this test and then the test we done in Castle's Retreat. And that is due to the fact of the different test scenarios, and that's the same with all other content. Different companions are going to perform differently based on the content. That's just the way it is. So you kind of just have to take one that is going to either provide team support or reliable damage in all different content, that's like Regis and the Minotaur Mercenary. Very solid companions, and I personally would always go for the Minotaur. But that again is if you have the luxury to already have him or be able to afford getting him because you already have everything maxed out and nothing to spend on. So hopefully this is somewhat insightful. Many thanks to all of these channel members for your added support, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.